Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. I have a very interesting video for you guys today. In the last little while, I've made a few videos on people getting taken or kidnapped by Bigfoot. A lot of these stories are from many years ago. The most famous of them all is, of course, the Albert Osman encounter that happened back in the 20s. And there's another one from the late 20s about Mushalat Harry, who was held captive by a large group of Sasquatch and managed to escape as well. But a lot of the stories are of First Nations women who are taken, they're kidnapped, they're snatched up, and they're held captive for a long time. I mean, I recently made a video where a girl was held captive for years. And, the Sasquatch took care of her, it fed her, wanted to keep her, but she desperately wanted to get away back to her people. Now, the story I'm going to talk about today is the story of a First Nations woman called Seraphine Long. And back in 1871, at the age of 17, she was apparently kidnapped by a younger male Sasquatch. She was walking home with an armful of wood, and she was going down the trail, and a Sasquatch came and snatched her. And as it did that, it took pitch from a tree, like tree sap, put it in her eyes, and essentially sealed them shut, so she couldn't, figure out where it was taking her. I guess this creature took her, threw her over its shoulder, and made off up to the higher elevations, up a mountain. And I guess it took her into a cave where there was an older male Bigfoot and an older female Bigfoot that, she assumed were this younger Bigfoot's parents, and that makes sense. But it removed the pitch from her eyes, and she was essentially, a prisoner. She was held captive, but these creatures did take care of her. They fed her fish and deer and, things of that nature. She desperately wanted to leave. When she first got there, she begged them to leave. She was very worked up, and she was crying and bawling and begged them to leave. And apparently these Bigfoot creatures would just smile at her and nod their heads or shake their heads in a way that says, no, you're not leaving, which that is just kind of creepy when I visualize that in my head. Now, she apparently was with them for about a year, okay? And the weird thing about the story is that somewhere along the way, she had gotten pregnant by this Bigfoot creature, and that is, one of the most bizarre things. This is one of the strangest Bigfoot stories. She was impregnated, and, she felt she was being held captive in this cave, like a dark cave, and they wouldn't ever let her leave, and she was always being watched by at least one of these creatures, but she felt like her health was declining. She was getting sick, and she thought she was going to die. So she begged and begged these creatures to let her go. She wanted to see her family one last time before she died. So eventually, I guess somehow she managed to get these creatures to let her leave. And what they did was they put that pitch back in her eyes to seal them shut. And the Sasquatch creature, the younger one, carried her back down the mountain to an area that was relatively close to her village, where she came from, which was near Harrison Lake in British Columbia. That's where the story takes place. I should have mentioned that before. This takes place in British Columbia. And so does the Albert Osman story and a lot of the other stories of where these First Nations women are taken by Sasquatch. And I also believe the Mushalat Harry story was in British Columbia as well. So British Columbia appears to be the hot spot, of where people get taken against their will by Sasquatch. But anyways, the Sasquatch brings her back close to the town, removes the pitch from her eyes, and lets her go. So she got back to her people. And I guess a few months later, roughly, she ended up having this baby, which was, some sort of strange hybrid between a Bigfoot and a human, obviously. But the baby was, not doing very well. It died very quickly after being born. And once that happened, you know, the story kind of fizzled away and was never really talked about ever again. Seraphine didn't die like immediately after getting back to her people. She actually lived, I think, till the late 30s, the 1930s. And there's a picture here you can see. This is apparently one of the only pictures, I think it's the only picture that was ever taken of her. And you can see she looks quite old. And rumor has it she died not long after this photo was taken. So who knows if the story is true? Okay, and it's the same thing with all these other stories. We don't know if they're actually true. The odd thing is, though, is that, you know, there's so many of them, and they're very similar. And, you know, they go across First Nations cultures from all over, like Western Canada and the United States. You know, these women are getting taken and being held captive, and sometimes, like in this case, being bred with, and, you know, potentially having hybrid Bigfoot human children. I think there was one other story I read, I can't remember the name of it exactly, where another woman was, you know, impregnated by a Sasquatch, which is just very, very weird to think about. I don't know what else to say about that other than it's just like very strange, and it would be a nightmare. It would be a nightmare to be taken by these creatures. It would be absolute hell to be held captive for a prolonged period of time like that, like over a year. Could you imagine that? So, a very interesting, bizarre story. Surprised I've never made a video about this before or even talked about it at all on the channel. Every time I hear a story of Bigfoot taking people, I like to make a video about it. And, you know, like I said, you know, these stories seem to all occur in British Columbia, at least the majority of them do. And, you know, they seem to happen, I guess, prior to the, you know, Patterson footage. I cannot recall a single story off the top of my head of a person being taken in this manner that happens after the Patterson footage. I mean, we do have all the stories of the missing 411 cases, and people theorize that Bigfoot have something to do with that. And there's a lot of missing 411 stories that happen, you know, in recent years and, you know, in the last few decades. But we don't know if they were Sasquatch. Nobody's actually survived and was found again and said they were taken by Sasquatch, you know, with those missing 411 cases. So we don't know. But anyways, that's all I have for today's video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I mean, this is a weird one, and I want to see what you guys think. And if you have any other stories like this that you know of, let me know as well. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and we'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.